Hey. Taff into the out of this world story from our space. People say you don't really know someone until you fight with them. Today on our space, a cheater saw his chance and swooped in for the kill. Fiance cheated on me with her colleague. I partnered with a fair partner's wife, ruined their career, and booked them for fraud. I, male 39, engaged to my colleague, Shelly. She was a new recruit in our office at a different team, but since we worked on the same floor, we hit it off. After hanging out for a while, I asked her out. We dated for 3 years before making it official. We got engaged a few months ago and are planning our wedding next year. We had our share of ups and downs, fights, and love like a normal couple. Everything was fine, and we never fell out of love until I got promoted to another department and a different location, and things have been falling out ever since. I've gotten very busy with my work and commute. We don't get to spend as much time as we used to. Well, we do spend our time with each other at home, but earlier, since we were in the same office, it was like we were always together, right from going to the office, coming back together, heading out for dinner after work, and not to mention lunch and coffee breaks. Our offices were in the same city, and it was not a long-distance relationship. But this is going to be different as we were not in the same office anymore. However, this wasn't a big deal. We got used to our new schedule soon. The problem was bigger. It was about Smith, Shelly's senior teammate. I really never liked the guy at all. I don't like their closeness or the way he acts around her, and that became one of the main reasons behind our regular arguments after my location got changed. It was my natural intuition, and it was not a random one because I had worked with Smith before. He doesn't have a good reputation with women. He always had his eyes on every girl who worked with him and flirted with him. I have told Shelly the same thing. If she's working with him, she should have a healthy distance and not let him get inside her boundaries. But she never listened to my advice and told me that I was accusing him of something I didn't know. She said Smith was just a jovial and sweet guy, and hence people misunderstood him. Sometimes it felt like either she was too kind to hate anyone or too dumb to understand people. After I moved to the other location, she started taking lunch and coffee breaks with Smith. She had the option of going with her peers, but I don't know why she still chose to hang out with her senior. Eventually, I saw her packing an extra lunchbox for Smith every other day. It was annoying for me. Her fondness for Smith was creeping into her social media with his flirty comments on her pictures and tagging each other on stupid memes 100 times a day. Even at the last office party, she chose to go with Smith. I offered to pick her up from the office, then go together to the party location. But she said she would go with Smith and I can come directly to the party from my workplace. At the party, I was hoping to have a good time with my previous colleagues in the office, but I got a weird vibe from people as if they were hinting towards Smith and Shelly's closeness. I confronted Shelly that she should maintain a distance from him as people are not taking it appropriately. I was not comfortable with them hugging each other at the drop of a hat or him placing his hands on her back all the time. She told me that Smith was like a best friend to her and she would never betray me. I was like, wait a minute, when the hell did Smith become her best friend? I also got to know from a few people that Shelly was acting as Smith's assistant in the office, getting him coffee, bringing him homemade lunch, and following him like a puppet. She said that people were jealous of her because Smith was grooming her for the next promotion. I told her that taking help from seniors is one thing, but becoming their puppet is another. She got offended to hear this and told me that I was insulting her and that I was trying to control her. I was astonished by her statement. Smith became our topic of argument most of the time. Our fights escalated when I found them sitting inappropriately and then lying to me. One day I had to suddenly visit my last office for some urgent meeting. I didn't inform Shelly about this. I wanted to surprise her. After the meeting, I went to meet Shelly at her cubicle, but she wasn't around. Someone told me that she was in the cafeteria above. I went upstairs to find Shelly sitting very closely with Smith, and his hands were sometimes on her back and sometimes on her thighs. Throughout this, she never asked him not to place his hands on her, not even once. They were smiling, giggling, and talking about God knows what, but it didn't seem like a work conversation. I stood there near the elevator and saw them for some time. I called her. She looked at her phone screen and then placed it upside down on the table. It boiled my blood to see that. I texted her if she was busy. She saw the message and after wondering for a minute, she replied she was busy in a meeting. That one lie made me realize how many more lies she was feeding me till now. I texted her back and told her that I was there in the office. She showed my message to Smith and they both stood up to leave. I left before they came towards the elevator. I left the office and came home directly. It was still a few hours left for work, but I was just not in a mental state to work anymore. I felt heartbroken because I really loved her so much and didn't expect her to lie to me. After some time, she texted me where was I, and if I had left the office. I ignored her messages. When she came home, she asked me why I left the office without meeting her. I said my head was hurting, so I came back home. The entire week went like that. We barely spoke to each other. I gave her cold shoulders until we got an email, but some teams were to go on office trips for client meeting. I saw Shelley and Smith's names from their department. My team was not a part of this program. And as per the rumors, it was Smith's decision to take Shelley with him. Shelley came back home, unusually happy, and after dinner, she started packing for the trip, which was still a week ahead. I won't lie that I was not annoyed to see her excitement. She tried out a few formal outfits before packing and asked me how she was looking. I said she looked hot, and Smith wouldn't be able to resist himself after seeing her in those outfits. I know I was mean and severely sarcastic, but my patience went over the roof, and I couldn't hold myself back. She sat down on the couch looking at me. After a cold stare, she started screaming at me and told me that she is not responsible for my insecurity and that I couldn't control her. She told me that I was not trusting her and I was clearly trying to snatch her freedom and follow the BS patriarchy. She said she would not sacrifice her career opportunity because of me. I remained silent for a minute and then told her that I saw her in a meeting with Smith in the cafeteria. Her face turned pale and she was like, yeah, all the meeting room was occupied, so we had to have the meeting in the cafeteria. I said, yeah, and you guys were so busy giggling and he rubbing your back that you ignored my calls and showed my text to Smith. Her anger turned to embarrassment, and she told me that she was scared that I might get angry at her, and that's why she hid the truth that she was at a coffee break with Smith. She remained silent and told me that she was trying to avoid him, but she couldn't just ignore someone working in the same department, and also he was her senior and helping her level up in her work. She almost blurted out, how can she hurt someone who was helping her so much? I asked her, surprised, what kind of help he was lending that she felt so obliged to him and that she was even risking our relationship and hurting me. She requested me to trust her and that she would never do anything that would ruin our relationship. Honestly, I was not accusing her of cheating, but treating each other like that was considered cheating, and if you ignore all the signs, things might escalate very quickly. The argument went on for hours, and she created a whole dead freaking drama of crying and weeping. It was so stressful that I just couldn't handle it. I decided to discuss this with her calmly later. The business trip was actually very important, and I didn't want to ruin her chances by creating a fuss about it. I told her I trusted her, and now it was her responsibility to reciprocate the trust and not do something to mess it up. We made up for the argument. She was excited about the trip and her presentations. I had an eerie feeling when she was leaving, but I dropped her off happily, wishing her luck. She called me some time back that she had reached safely and was preparing for her big day tomorrow. I trusted her, but I'm also not having a very good feeling about her closeness with Smith. If I discuss this with anyone, I'll be labeled as an insecure man. So thanks for providing this space where I can pour my heart out without the fear of being judged. Of course she thought he was a jovial and sweet guy. He was sweet-talking her. On top of that, there's bound to be changes when you don't see your partner as much day to day. But this guy definitely thought he'd sweep in for the kill. That's for sure. And best friend? We're like best friend with benefits. And what she's doing sounds like emotional cheating, not physical cheating. And you have a bad feeling about this guy? Plus, he's got a reputation. Chances are your gut is right. Update 1. It's been a while since I made an update. I thought I would be facing a backlash for controlling my fiance, but thanks for affirming that I was not controlling, and instead I was careful in not letting the red flags slide. I'm glad I didn't miss seeing those signals. After my last post, I read so many stories on this community posts regarding wives, husbands cheating on a business trip that my heart sank. I tried to be calm, but I couldn't help but create various situations in my head of Shelley cheating on me with Smith. I had this uncontrollable urge to call and check upon her often, but then I controlled my thoughts and gave her the space. It was a 3-day trip, and since the day she came, she had been acting very weird and was unusually silent. I asked her if everything was okay, and she told me that her presentation didn't go that well. That's why she was a little upset. But to me, it felt like something else, and her behavior was very suspicious to me. Shelley was never that clingy to me before, but now she's continuously texting and wants to be around me all the time. It wasn't like I hated her clinginess, but it all happened so suddenly that it was hard for me to process and know the actual intentions. I don't know what was going on between Smith and her. She never mentioned his name once, and I never saw her texting him either. I don't know if this was popping out because of guilt or if this was her genuine feeling. At first, I thought maybe she had distanced herself from him because it was upsetting me, but it was not like that. A few weeks later, I again had to visit my last office location for a meeting. After the meeting, I went down to meet Shelley and my previous colleagues. Shelley's cubicle was empty. I asked about her and got to know that she had called in sick that day. I was surprised because I didn't know she was on leave. I usually leave for work earlier than Shelley because my office is far. I thought she felt sick after I left our office. I called Shelley to check her health, but she didn't respond. After some time, she called back saying she was busy in a meeting. I asked her what kind of meeting. She got irritated and said work meeting. I was like, are you at the office? She said yes. Where else would she be on a Wednesday afternoon? And hung up. My mind raced with several thoughts about her lying. I realized that she didn't have sex after she came back from the business trip, and every time I initiated it, she was either tired or not in a mood. I went home thinking of having a head-on confrontation, but I saw her sleeping and she looked pale. I decided to park the discussion until dinner. She woke up after a while and said she was not feeling well and would skip dinner. I munched something from the kitchen and went to bed. She was awake. I asked her about her day, thinking she would tell the truth. She just replied it was good. I was about to confront her when she said that if there was a way to get to a transfer to my office location. I asked why she wanted to move and if there was anything bothering her. She said no, just like this. I told her that she was behaving differently after returning from the office trip. She said she was upset because of her poor performance in front of the client and was scared she might not get a promotion this time. I consoled her that it was okay and sometimes things get messed up and she didn't need to worry about that. She still didn't say anything about calling in sick at work on that day. She was stressed, so I thought to discuss it later. She dozed off after a while. I was feeling uneasy with the way she was behaving. I saw her phone and couldn't help but sneak into it. I navigated straight to her WhatsApp. She did have her chats with Smith, and I have read those chats earlier. Yes, I checked her phone once before her office trip. She never flirted with him, but he did. And the last text was before the business trip, and they didn't talk after that. I checked her social media DMs and activity, but there was nothing suspicious. I was just scrolling through her inbox, and there was a text message that caught my attention. It was from an app where she got an appointment with a gynecologist right after she came back from the trip. The text said that the report was sent to her on the app. I opened the app, and there was an in-app chat conversation between Shelley and her doctor. It was an in-app consultation. I read her entire conversation. Shelley had consulted a gynecologist because she suffered from post-coital bleeding. I didn't know what that was. The doctor asked her to take an STI test. Those texts were alarming, and I had a very bad hunch that something was up, and I was just not able to see. I moved to the report section of the app and fetched her reports. The reports were negative, but the question that lingered with me was why she needed to do that when we hadn't had sex for almost a month. I got really scared and freaked out. I Googled the term post-coital bleeding, and it meant bleeding due to rough, forceful intercourse. My heart sank because I'm never rough in bed. It was either she had cheated on me or someone had forced themselves into her. Both of the situations was devastating for me. I just couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. I just spent the night walking on the lawn trying to calm down my thoughts. When she woke up in the morning, I was sitting in the living room with sleep-deprived eyes. She asked me where I was the whole night. I said, reading her SDI reports. She froze and sat on the couch in front of me. She was struggling for words. I said I visited the office yesterday and got to know that she was on leave. She told me that she was in a doctor's clinic when I called, so she impulsively lied to me. She was trying to cover it, saying she was anxious and all. I cut her off midway and said she need not to lie because I knew she had cheated on me. She tried manipulating me more than one time by saying that sometimes STI is the reason behind postcoital bleeding, and it doesn't mean she was cheating. I asked her from whom she got the STI. Smith? She started crying and told me her tests were negative, and she did nothing like that, and that I was just making my own assumptions. It all happened due to stress, but she wanted to be double sure that she was fine, and that's why she avoided sex until the reports came. I told her that STIs don't happen without having sex, and we didn't have it for months. And before I could say anything, she told me that she just wanted to make sure she didn't have it. I told her that I didn't believe her at all, and I needed a break because she had fed me so many lies that I just couldn't stay with her anymore. We fought for over an hour. She refused to admit that she had cheated on me and said she had gotten an infection, and hence she got the tests done. She was just not ready to accept her mistakes and kept giving me one lame excuse after another. The argument got severe, and I was losing my mind at her rigidness. Before I lost my mind and did something regretting, I stood up to leave. She started crying and begging me not to leave her, but I left. I really don't know how to process this. I'm living with my parents for a few days until I figure out what to do next. Oh, crocodile tears. Like a little baby that got caught. You already know she's cheating on you. I mean, she went on a trip and then came back and had to get all these tests. Of course she cheated on you. This woman is impossible. Update 2. It turns out that she was not only a cheater, but also a fraud. So last day, after I stormed out of my house, I stayed at my parents' place. Sheila continuously tried to reach out to me all this while. After a week, I got an urgent call from the company's director, asking me to run to his cabin, as there was a very serious matter that needed to be discussed right away. I immediately rushed to his cabin. We got to know that someone sold the design of our upcoming project to a competitor company, and that's why our proposal got rejected. We are in a construction company, and it was a big deal project for us. The investigation was on, but I was asked to find out an immediate solution as soon as possible. The atmosphere was so tense with all the pressure upon me to find a fix. While I was still working on it, I got a visitor at my office. It was Smith's wife. I met her a few times at office parties. She was there to tell me something important. I knew what was coming for me. She told me that while on the business trip, Smith sent her a photo by mistake where he was drunk making out with Shelley. She knew I and Shelley were engaged. That's why she wanted me to know the truth. Though I was having a strong feeling about this, getting to know that all of my wildest thoughts were true was heartbreaking. I sat there numb, unable to process what happened. She showed me that picture and it was hard to see. They were without clothes, and Shelley looked drunk. I was so angry that I wanted to throw Shelley out of my house right away. A fair partner's wife was crying badly and she looked very restless and weak, as if she hadn't slept for weeks. I asked her if she was fine. She said she was fine, but there was something else she wanted to tell me. She was very restless and said she wasn't sure if she could tell me this or not because it was a big thing. I comforted her that I would ensure she didn't get into trouble for this, not from my side at least. She told me the Smiths sold the project design we were going to create to the competitor company for a hefty sum. I asked her how she knew about all this. She said she sneaked into Smith's laptop after he returned from the business trip and scanned all the emails. She shared all the evidence and urged me to take all appropriate action against Smith. The shocking part was Shelley was hands in gloves with him. They both conspired against the company. That was our agenda from all those non-stop important meetings. It was so effing horrible knowing we worked our butt off for this project, and they were fooling around for their own selfish motive. I went to the director of the company and showed him everything. Investigation was still on, and the team had found some clues that hinted towards Smith, but they didn't get any concrete evidence yet. But the details shared by a fair partner's wife left no doubts about the culprits. I went back home that day. Shelley looked miserable like a skeleton. To be honest, I don't give a crap about her anymore. I gave her as many chances as she needed, but she just didn't care and did the exact opposite and spoiled everything. She looked at me with amusement, and I told her not to come near me. She said I was unnecessarily blowing up the situation. I pulled up the picture that a fair barber's wife had shared with me and flashed it in front of Shelley's face. She froze. She must have wanted to say that it was morphed and so on, but looking at my deadbeat face, she backed off. I informed her that we have all the evidence against her and a fair barber for selling the project design to the competitor. She said she had no idea about it. I told her that the evidence showed her involvement. She said a fair barber had her laptop and email access. He might have misused it. I don't know if she was still lying or if the fair barber had used her. Neither do I care now. After knowing her truth, I feel I have never known her, and she has always been an imposter. I told her that it doesn't make her a less horrible person. She started crying and pleading with me to give her another chance. I felt so disgusted to even look at her face. I called off the engagement, threw the ring at her, and asked her to leave the house. It wasn't easy to get rid of her, with her never-ending texts and voicemails peeping through the blocked-up folder. It's been a few days since she left. I was living at my parents' place until she vacated the house. The affair burner got fired and blacklisted for fraud. The management is working on filing an official complaint against him so he doesn't do the same thing to another company. Shelley too got fired. She showed up at my parents' place, asking me to not ruin her career. I said it was not my decision and I cannot do anything about it. It's a difficult phase for me, but I feel relieved to think that I dodged a bullet and saved myself from an imposter. Why would she ask you not to ruin her career? She made all the choices here and chose to work with that scum Smith. Well, not only work, but she was working all angles. I'm sorry all this happened to you, OP. I'm sorry you had to find out from a fair barber's wife. It's disgusting to know that he has a reputation and yet still has a wife at home. How could someone like that do that to their partner? I'll never understand. I feel like another chance with your ex-fiance would just mean another opportunity for her to cheat and steal from your business. Luckily, you never walked down the aisle with that woman. Better to find out who she truly is now than 3 years in. What do you make of this? Would you have caught on right away? You have a similar story or know someone who does? Share it with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on the next video. See you next time on Our Space.